You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. I have a very important guest, I believe, Cathleen Beerkens. She's the author of Your Creator Matrix. We're going to talk about epigenetics, but we're going to talk about substances called glycans that play a very large role in how epigenetics happens and is modulated, etc., and how your DNA is influenced. So we'll get into more of that because I don't know enough to speak about it intelligently yet. Kathleen graduated from University of Maryland with a BS in Health Education in 83 and continued, and she received a BSN from Georgetown University Nursing School in 85. Then began a career in nursing for 11 years in various positions. And she's also worked in midwifery. Now she's part of the Wellness Revolution at an Institute for Integrative Nutrition that's based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So again, we're going to talk about a very important topic that I think is maybe almost never spoken about, at least on my podcast, which is hard to accomplish, seeing that I've done over 4,000 of them. But welcome, Kathleen. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely to meet you, Richard.
So tell me, how did you first become aware of epigenetics? How did you first become aware of these substances called glycans?
Yeah, so I started after I kind of left nursing and I had my own wellness journey, you could say, or illness journey. We usually have an illness journey to find wellness, right? Which is unfortunate. We should just have a wellness journey. That's my thing now. But I think I started to understand that it was my imbalance, let's say, was driven by many factors. So not only one of being stress, of course, and another being emotions, and another being, physically what I was not eating. I was lacking certain critical nutrients, I realized as I did my research. So I started to kind of research, and, there are, no accidents, there's synchronicities that happen to us. And I kind of learned about nutrition, not because of nursing, because I tell you in nursing and medicine, they don't teach you about nutrition. And I know my son is a doctor and he's at Mount Sinai now, he's a cardiologist fellow, and he will be honest and say, yeah, we didn't learn much. And when I ask him if he knows about the glycans, he only knows about it in terms of pharmacology. And yeah, so that's kind of disappointing that it's so linear.
Why would nutrition be important? It's the only thing that keeps you alive for however long you live. So, cares.
No, it's kind of funny because I remember having these gut problems when part of my problem were gut problems. And I went to a gastroenterologist and then I said, does it matter? And this was back when, a long time ago. Does it really matter what I eat? And he's like, well, not really. It's probably hereditary. And I'm like that just stuck with me. And I just didn't believe him. I'm like, I don't believe you. And then I was even more determined to research it. And I just came to understand that what I've learned is that we have huge impact on what happens to us. And we are, this man, Conrad Waddington, he wrote about epigenetics, that gene expression is altered by our changing landscape, and our landscape is altered by us. We choose our landscape on so many levels. And so what I started to understand through my research is that going beyond, epi meaning above genetics, that we're not just victims of our genes, that we have influence over what happens to us, that we also have influence what we put in our mouths, and that what we put in our mouths, we need to have critical nutrients to build every cell of our body. And if we don't have the macronutrients of enough protein, enough good fats, enough nucleic acids, and enough glycans, those are the 4 macronutrients that build every cell of our body will not function properly. And so that's huge, that little bit of information. Now, there's many more things that are in my book, like, about the emotional component and about the spiritual component, and that we are not just physical beings at all. We are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience in a physical body. However, this physical body has certain needs. And so what I came to understand is that in a nutshell, the new sciences, and these sciences like glycoscience and epigenetics are showing us that the body cares about geometry. The body cares that the structures are in place to create optimal function and optimal communication. And so actually a happy body, mind, spirit complex is one that is self-regulating based on cell communication and self-recognition. And so when the body can't recognize itself, when the cells get degraded and they don't function properly, we start to have miscommunication in the body. And miscommunication leads to disease or imbalance. And so that was, in a nutshell, what I learned. Now it's much more technical.
Can we take a quick detour and go through the life cycle of glycans? Like, how do we take them in nutritionally, and then how are they formed in the body?
Yeah, so the glycans are the sugars, the crystalline sugars that are not linear. They're multidimensional they primarily form what they call the glycocalyx, or the outside of the cell. So they form structures sort of like hairy structures. And they look like a beard, actually. It's kind of interesting. If you want to look at these sugars, these structures, they are kind of like an alphabet. They constantly change in real time based on data. So you could almost say they are our way to be online. Does that make sense? They are the way that we can be online, our body.
Are they bound to the exterior membrane of cells? Are they free floating? Like, where are they?
No, they are free floating, but they're mostly where they are most, let's say, powerful is on the cell membrane. And they literally they are our way of, let's say the cell has eyes, ears. They are the eyes, the ears, and the sensor organs of that cell. So whatever comes to the cell, whether it's food or whether it's, certain enzymes or hormones or lectins or anything that would come to the cell, a virus, a bacteria, those sugars, those glycans, they connect and they're like receptors, and they say, oh, you're here. I know you. Yes, I'm going to let you in. Or I don't know you. Ooh, danger, attack. They're going to be looking out to protect the cell and to make sure that whatever's coming to the cell, that we know the cell knows what to do to promote itself, to heal itself, to rejuvenate, to connect to other cells, to in some cases, some cells need to be killed. So the apoptosis. So it self-regulate. Let's say they are connecting every cell to its environment and you. And every time you have an emotion, your hormones are sitting on those receptors, influencing the frequency of every cell. So it's actually more complicated than just physical. It's hormonal, it's spiritual. These glycans connect us to a universal, we would say, field, a biofield that we're all connected to. And that's another whole conversation. But I think for the purpose of this conversation about just let's keep it physical, like in the physical world, the National Academy of Science in 2012 wrote a 200-page document about these glycans and how important they are. And they wrote that they are involved in almost every biological process and every disease. They are involved in everything that happens within the cell, like cell differentiation, protein folding, membrane trafficking, molecular clearance, modulation of the immune system. So I could go on and on, but those are just some basic functions.
Nutritionally, how do you get them? Where do they come from?
Yeah, so nutritionally, well, unfortunately, this is our problem, okay? I will say that right now, they are in things like certain mushrooms. They are in seaweed. They are in certain vegetables still. But because of the way that we've altered our food, and this is a real problem, I think one of the issues that has really hit us is the green harvesting, because these sugars need to be ripened under the sun. And, when we started picking food green and shipping it all across borders and faraway places, and we put it in warehouses for weeks and months, which is true, by the way. And then we sprayed those vegetables to look a certain color, but they didn't ripen naturally under the sun. We missed out on a lot of glycans.
I think I remember seeing beta glycans in one of the foods I've eaten, on the label.
That's probably the mushrooms. the thing is, you can get them, but you have to look for them, and we need them desperately because every cell of our body is covered with them. Now, our liver, because they're critically important, will make them as an emergency mechanism. But as you know, probably from you've been doing 4,000 podcasts, you know how our liver is a little overwhelmed right now with all the toxicity on the planet. So it's, to stay healthy, we need to be able to clean our bodies. We need to be able to, our cells need to clean, but we also have to be able to build healthy cells. But we need the ingredients. It's sort of like making a house without the right stuff, it's not going to hold up, right? It's not going to do everything you want it to do. So without these glycans, which are responsible for all cell communication in the body, then we are seeing a lot of illness right now on the planet from the lack of these ingested glycans, but also from the fact that a lot of the food that we're eating not only isn't healthy because it doesn't have a lot of live essence, it isn't alive anymore because it's been sitting in these warehouses.
Have you seen any X-ray crystallography of glycans, attached or unattached from a cell? Is that available in your papers?
Yeah, well, what you can say is that when you look at a cell and you see the hairy fuzz, what it looks like is light. When you look at the cells, if you look under a microscope, you'll see light around every cell. Those are the glycans. Light is information.
So do they completely cover the cell membrane, or they preferentially cover it in certain spots?
Yes. And they literally change. Can you imagine? They are like an alphabet, and they communicate through light and information, everything that happens in the body. So let's say, something really, you've got a virus, you've got to communicate that we need to call in the troops. We got to get our immune system ready for this and attack, right? That's what the body wants to do. Well, the glycans are responsible for the modulation of your immune system. In other words, they are responsible for instance, first of all, they're responsible for recognizing who's there. So the worst thing that's happened is that the body many people are having autoimmune diseases right now. And autoimmune, the base of it is that your body's attacking itself. It's not recognizing itself. So that is a problem with cell communication, right? You can imagine. If I see a cell, and I should know that cell is me, it has a code. And so that's the first thing the glycans do, is they check who's who in the body, including cells. So is this me or is this something else? And the fact that we have so many autoimmunes right now tells us that we are not doing very well with self-recognition. The second thing it does is when I said it modulates, if something's it's constant, it's a protection, it's at the cell membrane, so it's going to protect that cell. But the thing is, it has to recognize the invader. It has to be able to stop the invader. And if it's asleep and it's not communicating well, if you're not communicating well, you're not very effective. True, Richard? If we're not communicating well.
Exactly. And there's how do glycans interact with epigenetic signaling, or is that not even studied yet?
Well, I believe, if I have to say it in broad strokes, it's kind of, imagine that your system is signaling constantly and communicating everything that needs to happen. So therefore, let's say you need to make certain proteins. See, the glycans and the proteins, they go together. They're called, when they're made, and they're made in the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus in the cell. When they're made through the process of glycosylation, you take in the food gets in the body, it gets reconfigured into new structures based on what's needed to happen in the cell. But it will need to go to the nucleus to get instruction manual, sort of what does it need to do? What kind of structures do I need to make for this thing that's happening in the cell or outside the cell, etc. So I believe that one of the things that I have researched is protein synthesis. So we make certain proteins based on certain, instructions in the DNA and in the ribosomes, right? And so we make a copy of the program, and all of this is signaled. It's through cell signaling that this stuff is translated. So the glycans are definitely involved. And so imagine then, if you have a problem with making a protein because you didn't get the right instruction, because the instructions were all garbled and there was miscommunication, then what we have is cell misfolded proteins, which is so the two issues that the National Academy of Science brings up with disease, two problems, is the misfolded proteins. And then the other one was the lack of, so the misfolded proteins causes, and also the glycosylation, when it's called apparent glycosylation. In other words, the glycosylation doesn't go right and our structures are not made properly, and then they cannot function properly. So how would this affect epigenetics? Well, imagine that we already know epigenetically that what we eat can influence what genes are turned on and off. True?
Oh, so this would cause your body to epigenetically change in a way that doesn't really mimic the environment you're in. It would be as if, this is just my speculation, your body thought you were smoking when you're not, and so that it would respond and the gene signaling would change in such a way as to like maladapt to your current environment because it's being overshadowed by this. It's not being communicated properly as to what's actually going on in your environment.
Exactly. So think about like the tumor suppressor genes that like can be altered, like modified, through methylation. And I mean, we are just beginning to understand we do know one thing, that without the proper nutrients, we don't make the right structures and we don't function. Our cells cannot function properly. We have a lot of this going on right now in our bodies because we haven't been eating the right foods. And not only that, we've been eating a lot of processed foods. We haven't been eating live food. We've been eating old fruit, old vegetables. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tasted the difference in like homegrown vegetables.
Oh, yeah. And my friend lives in Seattle, and we went walking, and they have blackberry bushes everywhere. And they're much smaller than you get in a store. But the ones in the store taste like water. And these were really small, but I tasted, like dozens of different flavors in them. They're amazing. And you don't get anywhere near that from the store-bought stuff.
Exactly. And that taste are the glycans. The glycans gives it its sugar, the taste. Isn't that amazing? And even
okay.
Yeah. So you can even have a different glycan count based on if the tree's in the bright sunlight or if it's in the shade.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you, there's another disorder that I'm familiar with, Ehlers-Danlos, where, it seems like more women than men will have a protein folding, a collagen misformation. So it sounds like there may be some kind of correlation there with a problem with their glycans that's either causing this or this interplaying with, I don't know. Again, just speculation, just what came to mind, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with people that have, collagen folding or protein folding disorders.
Yeah, I've heard of this, and I have an uncle who had it. I think the thing is, I'm convinced that if we were eating the right nutrition and we were having enough glycans, that the intelligence of the body is so big that it could perhaps override some of the DNA problems. Do you understand what I mean? Like, we have seen things. I have people who have ingested the glycans and then their children, like I have a friend whose child has Downs, and he took the glycans and she saw a big difference in his developments.
Let's talk about the nutritional angle shortly. Tell me, if you don't mind, like what happened in your health journey and what symptoms were you having, and did you start consuming foods with more glycans, and what happened to you? Maybe there's probably some information in that story that'll help.
Yeah, so when I was burnt out, obviously, and I had some issues I was definitely not, I had like, my first baby had a lot of health issues. So I always had to learn, and I tell about this in my book, I had to learn about what really brings health and wellness by seeing what didn't work. And, my whole family are doctors. I was a nurse. I didn't know anything about integrative medicine, and I don't like to call it alternative medicine because it's ridiculous. It should be integrative. We should look at all forms of medicine, ancient wisdom techniques. I have learned have a lot of value, but if we're not aware of the value, then we're not going to try it, right? So it would be great if I believe in Western medicine on some level. Of course I do. I have a whole family that's there. But I also believe that we have lost a lot of valuable information that needs to look at the whole, And so my story was, it wasn't just the nutrition, but when I added in the glycans, for instance, I could feel that I have ADHD and I could see that my brain, I could focus far better. Had a lot more energy. I saw for me, I wasn't really ill, but I was just a tired mom, let's say. And I felt a lot stronger. But I've seen a lot of other people who definitely had problems add the glycans and see a huge change in their life. Now, a lot of people don't get enough in the food, so they have to supplement. And there are many companies now coming on the market and on the market in America. So you have plenty of options for those glycans.
What will people see? Like, are these usually mushroom powders or like, actually,
Mm,
what would you see?
Yeah, you would want to, the best is when you can get all eight and, glucosamine, acetyl neurominic acid. There are 8 sugars. Fucose, it's not fructose, by the way, it's fucoidins. That comes from seaweeds. So yeah, many people just take mushrooms and they already feel a difference. So, but there are some companies out there that are giving all eight sugars, and they're great, all of them. You want to look for natural sources. You don't want to look for synthetic glycans, in my opinion. But and I think just eating more fruits and vegetables that are live, they're from local growers, where the farmer and and they're ethical and they're making the food, with a moral compass. This is something I think of the future that we are going to demand as consumers, because we're going to understand that a lot of our illness, it's not all, by the way, physical, because I help people heal energetically, I help people heal emotionally. So I cannot tell you it's only physical. This is just one huge component. But the emotional component and the psychological component and the trauma and all that also plays a huge role in our wellness.
I know a lot of money would be needed for this, but have you seen anyone do a diet-based study where, let's say a cohort has a standard American diet and you're able to, maybe do a blood draw or cell sampling, you look at the glycan structures, and then do the same for someone on a, different kind of diet that is high in glycans to see the difference structurally, the prevalence.
I know that a lot of companies have done these kind of things. I'm very interested in doing a study like that. I'm in a PhD program right now for integrative medicine. I'm starting it in March, and I definitely am interested in doing a study like that. But I think what it really comes down to with nutritional studies, and I'm not going to lie to you, is that they're not getting a lot of support from institutions of pharmacology where there is big money, because they're not going to support food. They're looking for drugs. So and all drugs have a LD level, right? A lethal dose level, lethal dose. Most are synthetic. And so I'm not saying you don't need a drug. I'm a nurse, so sometimes you need drugs. There's just no question about it. However, the amount of drugs we're using and taking in at this time on the planet is astronomical. And I don't believe that we're on so many chronic drugs. Medicines, like people are on 10 medicines just to survive. That just doesn't seem right. So these are the things that have kind of frustrated me as a nurse, and I would like to help us to live a healthier life. That's my goal, to help people live better lives and more optimal and well and feel good, and not because, all drugs have a toxicity. So I know one thing, all nutrition, it's not toxic. So if you take in good nutrition, it's not going to hurt you. Now, not everybody can handle the same amount of, everyone's unique and they need a unique diet. And I believe that where we're going is that we are understanding this more. We are understanding that people have to try what works for them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we could do a study in general, and I'm sure we would see that in general, people who eat live food, more nutrition in their food, more food that is well made, are going to be doing better. However, we can't say, because the epigenetic, the nutrigenetic and nutrigenomic factors, we're realizing now each person's, even their whole microbiome is unique. So each DNA is unique. So we're realizing that everybody reacts a little bit differently to food too. So, but do I think that people need more real food? Yes, I do. And I think most people in the world would agree, who are in this integrative medicine world, that we need to look at our diet and what we're putting in our mouths. And in the grocery store, most of the food is not really serving us at this moment.
Right. So in your book, what's the focus? Is it the nutritional aspect? Is it more the hardcore science aspect? What, again, for people that want to read it, what would they get?
Yeah. So your creator matrix means that we create our reality. And so it's a little bit more helping people to realize that they're not victim of their life, that they can make a difference in their life. And we create on all levels through our thoughts mentally, through our emotions, through our words, and through our choices. And this is exactly what epigenetics is showing us, that if we choose different things that are better for us, if we have a consciousness of what we really want in our life, we will have a better outcome, right? Because most of us are not even realizing we have a choice. And my book is saying, wait a minute, you are divine, you're whole, you're multidimensional, you're powerful. Once you realize who you are, you can create your reality, and you are creating it every day. And so I go through in the book how people are creating it, but also through science. Science is showing us how we create our reality, actually. I talk a little bit about quantum physics and what that means. That science is very powerful for who we truly are.
Well, offline, you mentioned at the very beginning that you said a lot of universities, or maybe even more than a lot, have a department that is studying glycans. So it does appear to be a topic of significant interest, right?
Yes, it's huge. And it's huge because imagine that if we didn't have cell communication, we just wouldn't exist. So you think it's important, the science?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Is the book out yet, or what's its status right now?
The book is out. It was on the bestseller for 6 months in Europe, which was kind of cool. It is on Amazon. And I did it with my sister to inspire people. She's an artist. So she did 13 portraits in the book. And it's just also in science. She did like beautiful portraits of the DNA and of cells. And so it's to help us also identify with who we are on a physical level also. It's very beautiful.
Okay. Where can people find out more about your work? The book's out. I don't know what's next for you. You're going through the PhD program. I'm sure you have lots of ideas that will come. So we'll follow your progress.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm the founder of a wellness revolution. I train health and wellness coaches all over the world to help the mainstream medicine make the changes that need to happen, because I believe health and wellness coaching is very powerful to help people make choices and changes in their lives and really prove the way their lives are going on all levels. So it's kind of exciting because the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, which is aligned with the medical board examiners, is now through our organization and many others like Duke University and the Mayo Clinic have programs. And our program is online, and we really do, in 6 months, we train our students, and then they're really ready to start. And many work with functional medicine doctors after they graduate. And it's actually very exciting what's happening. There is a change.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to meet you, Richard.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.